story follows a man who gets transported into a game he was playing, and reincarnated into a god named Nebula. However, he's not alone in this divine realm, as there were 27 other gods, and they have to fight to become the sole ruler of the planet and reshape it according to their vision. Part of their challenge is to find and influence a suitable tribe. And luckily for Nebula, a lizardman named RECAPS was insightful enough to realize what his intentions were. And so, after preparing what they necessarily needed, they followed their god's will and leave the sanctuary. However, their path was filled with dangers, as they encounter another tribe totally different from their own. The Frogmen. These frogmen had ulterior motives and sought to involve the lizardmen from the village in their schemes. They employed various tactics to persuade the black-scale lizards, but each attempt failed, as the lizards proved to be both intelligent and wary. However, a notable shift occurred on the 5th day of trading interactions. The lizards began showing a greater willingness to cooperate with the frogmen, unknown to the frogmen. This change in attitude was influenced by the lizardmen's god, who had signaled them to lower their defenses and place their trust in Owen, the only lizard among the frogmen. Now on to the next part. After the meeting was done, at the frogmen's base, Shunin was praising Owen for a job well done. RECAPS had told Owen almost everything about his clan and their village. That alone was already a great accomplishment, especially just for a single bow. Shunin couldn't even believe it, and so he asked Owen if those idiots of a lizards just said they would come to their village themselves, to which Owen confirmed. Even Oh-boy couldn't believe how foolish they were. And when they invited Shunin and a few of the frogmen warriors to his village, he thought it might be a trap, but it seems like they were just stupid all along. The frogmen warriors weren't able to go too far into the village, but they managed to confirm that everything RECAPS had said was true. Thanks to that, they learned the location and size of their village. They even learned about their medical history. And contrary to what the scout had said that the tribe consisted of about 600 people, in reality, there were about 300 people and only 30 warriors. This was such a great find that they couldn't even help themselves from stop smiling. However, Owen didn't smile, and just remained silent. And Shunin never thought RECAPS would come to trust them this much. A lot of it is thanks to Owen, so to reward him, he asked Owen what it is he wanted, which made Owen gulped, as this was the opportunity he had been looking forward to. But he remained humble and polite as to not accidentally provoke these frogmen. He stated that he can only ask what Shunin had promised him earlier. But as expected, Shunin couldn't even remember what it was, and Owen wanted to strike the frogman in front of him for his bad memory, but held himself back, and just helped Shunin remember, stating that if he succeeded in doing something big, he said he would allow his child to come out of the island and live with him. Shunin nodded, but Oh-boy opposed it up front. Luckily, Shunin had a backbone to say otherwise, and he was confident that he can convince his father. He always thought it was necessary to show them lizardmen that if they obey the frogmen well, no, not only obey, but if they serve them well, there will be times where good things can happen. And even if him and his son's life was set to be difficult in the future, Owen couldn't help himself but be thankful of what Shunin had done. A few moments later, Owen was at the same spot again, overlooking at the little island where his son was captive. But now, Owen's heart was full as he felt that his long-cherished dream had finally come true. He will now be able to live with his child. That's all he ever wished for. However, somewhere in his mind he was hesitant. This was all RECAPS' fault. That tribal leader should have been more suspicious and more cautious. But even if he curses RECAPS for being foolish, he can't help but remember the writings that RECAPS had shown him, and the conversations they had about the different characters. RECAPS wrote down characters that he himself and a lot of the other lizardmen in his clan had created and shared with each other. Then he explained the meanings to Owen. These primitive characters were very simple, and there weren't that many. Owen was smart enough to quickly memorize all of them. They're not just simple scribbles or hunting marks. He can combine them to express a different meaning, just like talking. RECAPS then asked Owen, who was quietly listening to the explanations, if he is having fun with this. To which he responded that it is fun, but he doesn't know if it's useful though. And RECAPS immediately corrected him that it's definitely useful. They call these things writings, and he has to know their meanings to understand what is being written, which Owen initially thought was ridiculous since RECAPS was only stating the obvious. But even before he could finish his response, Owen trailed off, realizing what RECAPS' words meant. He's saying that he, who just learned them, and RECAPS himself know what the characters mean, but the other frogmen wouldn't know. And with this, he wondered why RECAPS wanted to tell him this, and not the frogmen. And it seemed as if RECAPS had read his mind. He answered Owen reassuringly that it's because of trust. The things they talked about earlier, the conversation they had about building trust, it wasn't between them, but between him, representing the Lizardman tribe, and Owloy representing the Frogman tribe. However, the real trust he wanted to have is between the two of them. This caught Owen off guard, and as if he was ashamed of himself, and doesn't think he deserves such thing. Owen tried to laugh it off, and just deflect what RECAPS had said, stating that there is no need for that, as he was just someone in between the frogmen and him. But even before he could continue, RECAPS called out his name and with a serious tone of voice, he told Owen that they have exchanged trust today, but he does not trust the frogmen. He doesn't believe anything he said about them. He actually believes that there is a lot more to the story that he just said. In response, Owen asked if everything that they talked about today a lie, to which RECAPS immediately denies, and he can swear on everything he have that his name and everything about his clan is all true. And RECAPS said these words with his eyes wide open, and Owen could see from those eyes that this warrior and tribal chief had a strong sense of pride, and that he'd only told the truth. Owen wouldn't have been able to say that about himself, though. RECAPS then relaxed his facial expression and told him that the most important thing is the trust between them, because he also has the face of someone who is suffering. Owen unconsciously touched his face. As lizardmen had long snouts, they weren't a species known for their wide range of facial expressions. And seeing Owen's facial expression, RECAPS knew that he was on the mark, and so he continued, letting Owen know that he isn't alone, as they know much about suffering as much as he does. Him and his clan know very well what it's like being pushed aside and kicked out, and he saw that in him, and Owen exclaimed without realizing it. And so he quickly shook his head, and told RECAPS that he was not suffering. But RECAPS made him realize that only those who actually suffer say that. And then there was only silence between the two. To break off the silence, RECAPS lightly spun the wooden stick in his hand, and continued writing on the ground. One is an X symbol meaning not or no, and the other one was closely more like a square root symbol, which means lie or fake. And as RECAPS moved his hand, he noticed that RECAPS wrote the two symbols close together, so he pointed it out to RECAPS. With the way he wrote it, it says, "It's not a lie, thus it is true." This immediately impressed RECAPS as he never even thought about it that way. So he praised Owen for being smart. And because of this, Owen gave RECAPS a few ideas, and RECAPS thought it was a valuable discovery. While Owen found this moment strangely joyful and fun, but he realized his voice was shaking. He hadn't had a moment like this since getting enslaved by the frogmen, where he was so immersed in using his intellectual capabilities. It was the feeling wise individuals would get when they discovered a valuable innovation for their civilization. As Owen was telling his ideas to RECAPS, he vaguely thought to himself that it would be great if time would just stop right now. But that didn't happen. Time stops for no one, and so the time for them to get back to their respected group came. But before they could separate, Owen asked if there were nothing else he wanted to talk about, which RECAPS confidently smiled that there is none. He believes that trust has been shared between them, and he has already seen the signals. This confused Owen, but RECAPS didn't say anything further and simply smiled with his teeth showing. Owen could sense that there was something behind RECAPS' appearance of confidence, but he couldn't tell exactly what that was. But even with this, Owen believes that he won't be able to win against this many frogmen and the two-headed fiend. In Owen's head, he thought that it would be hard for the 30 lizardmen warriors to even make a small scratch on the two-headed fiend's scales. They mentioned they've caught a huge monster before. But that kind of news is nothing to those who see a real monster all the time in their everyday life. So even though RECAPS had brought a big and hard piece of the ancient beetle's shell to the barter, the frogmen just saw little value in it, which disappointed RECAPS, so they didn't go ahead with the exchange. It might have been an object that a vagrant traded saying it was valuable. Frogmen also have lots of those kinds of things. Fangs the size of a forearm or leather that doesn't rot. They are fascinating objects, but they don't really have any value. They don't even know how to use a bow. Not to mention they don't have a secret weapon like the frogmen warriors. In other words, while RECAPS did seem more thoughtful than Owen first assumed, he still believed RECAPS was a naive chief. RECAPS shouldn't have trusted someone like him, and Owen thought he had made up his mind. However, as Owen was about to leave, he looked at the symbols that RECAPS had taught him for the last time. But this only made him wonder why RECAPS put all his trust on him. He is nothing but a charlatan. The next day had arrived. The symbol that Owen wrote was now barely recognizable, but Shunan was in a good mood. As RECAPS and his warriors came to the frogmen's village, he even welcomed them with such an enthusiastic demeanor. And RECAPS responded in kind, thanking them for their warm hospitality, and he hopes to deepen the friendship between their tribes through today's gathering, which Shunan happily agrees. Still, Shunan was concerned that RECAPS might be offended, since he took warriors with him just to greet them. And it's all because Oboy, who refused to lower his suspicions to the end, kept saying that he had to bring 30 warriors with him to greet the lizardmen, which left Shunan a bit dissatisfied. Fortunately, it seemed to Shunan that RECAPS did not suspect a thing, as RECAPS was more concerned that they were the ones who were armed. He even apologizes to Shunan first, and admitted that Shunan made them scared after telling them about the cockatrice, so a few of their warriors insisted that they should be armed. as it would have been a problem should they run into something like it on the way here without their weapons, which Shunin understood. But on the inside, Shunin just laughed at how stupid they looked, as he already told them that a spear like the ones they have wouldn't be enough to do anything to a cockatrice. It was also pointless for the lizardmen to be armed with 3 of 4 spears because the frogmen used bows. The lizardmen would only be able to throw the spears 3 or 4 times, but the frogmen each carried around 10 arrows each. With this, Shunin's impression of RECAPS plummets even more, and now he was more confident that he will get them all drunk in the middle of the banquet hall, and then will shoot poison arrows into their backs. The frogmen hadn't shown the lizardmen that, but they also carried secret weapons around their waists, other than their quivers of arrows. These secret weapons were living poisonous frogs. Neurotoxins were secreted from the backs of these poisonous frogs, and applying some of the poison to an arrow would grant it a strong paralyzing effect. Shunin felt happy at the thought of the big black lizardmen in front of him helplessly collapsing. And as he was thinking of this, RECAPS asked him where's Owen located, to which Shunin answered that he left Owen to prepare the banquet, and he is currently preparing in the middle of the clearing as they could see. And it looks like he's drawing something on the ground, like he's deciding where everyone should sit, so they should take a seat to where Owen was working, while he go check to see if the food being prepared properly, which RECAPS gladly agreed. And so, Shunin left, and RECAPS led his warriors to the banquet, where Owen and 10 frogmen warriors were waiting, and as he got close, Owen greeted them with a smile and told RECAPS that he had marked the places they may sit at. And once him and his warriors take a seat, the banquet to celebrate peace and friendship between their 2 tribes will begin, to which RECAPS nodded. But as he looked at the character Owen had drawn on each seat, he knew exactly what to do. And so as he take his bone helmet, he told Yor to get started. With this, Yor instantly pulled out the spear strapped to his waist, and his actions were so natural and slick that the frogmen surrounding the lizardmen at the banquet didn't even notice what was going on. And so the sharp spear in Yor's hand just flew across the air like a lightning bolt and pierced a frogman warrior's head, surprising every frog within the vicinity. And with the blessing of insects they received, RECAPS' 30 warriors killed 10 frogmen warriors in the span of a breath. And RECAPS remained stone cold, as he had already been prepared to fight the frogmen after their first encounter, where he had noticed a certain look on Owen's face, the face of suffering, and RECAPS wasn't the only one who had noticed. Some had read a face of submission, and others read a face of defeat. These weren't things that could be concealed through acting just because one wished to hide it. It might be because they are all lizardmen, so there was no mistake in considering the frogmen as their enemy. And as the bloodbath begins, the lizardmen and frogmen preparing for the banquet began running away. Even Shunin also run away. So it seems like Arrow will be flying soon. But they don't need to worry about arrows as they already devised a backup plan. And since everything was sorted out now, it was about time to get their plans into motion. And looking back at Owen, he noticed his expression. There is no doubt that he has mixed feelings about this right now. It's best to make a move in this case and not letting Owen just stupidly stand around. So he turns to him and told him that there is something he must do, and that is to get a torch from one of the bonfires surrounding the banquet and use it to burn down all the house. This surprised Owen because the banquet was held in the center of the village and was mainly surrounded by the lizardmen's houses so that they could be surveilled. In addition to this, all the dry houses that would burn well belonged to the lizardmen since the frogmen overall preferred mud houses. And seeing Owen's confusion, RECAPS explained to him that there's no other choice. If the frogmen shoot arrows at them from far away, it'll be good to obstruct their view. The dry houses will create smoke once caught on fire, and that will act as another signal. Still, Owen was a bit hesitant, so RECAPS shouts some sense to him, asking him to hurry up and persuade the lizardmen if necessary. Tell them that the black lizardmen will save them from the frogmen. And as he continued to think twice, an arrow came flying, but RECAPS didn't even use his hands, but instead hit it away with his tail. With this, Owen sees how dire their situation was. And so he went to action and do what RECAPS told him to do. Owen picked up a large firewood that was burning in the pit and ran. Once he checked that the first house was empty, he set it on fire. Right then, a group came pouring into the alley. Startled, Owen first thought they were frogmen warriors, but then he realized they were the same lizardmen as he was. They were all familiar faces he knew. They then asked Owen, "What's he doing?" But it was obvious already. He felt that there is no need for explanation, so he just asked them instead. To which they explained that Oh Boy said to kill the black lizardmen, so they were on their way to the banquet. But even though they say that, the lean, skinny, and pitiful lizardmen were holding wooden clubs that couldn't even be used as weapons. With this, Owen told them that he is going to burn the houses down, which confused the others, and so they asked if this was Mr. Shunin's orders, to which Owen clarified that it isn't, as it was the black-scaled lizardmen over there who asked him to do so. This shocked the lizard, but even before they could call him crazy, Owen told them to trust him and the other lizards, as they promised that they will destroy the frogmen. But just like Owen, they believe that it won't be possible. No one can kill the two-headed fiend. Above all, how can they trust a trickster like him? But Owen just casually responded that it's exactly why they have to believe in him more. Because he, the trickster, was risking everything, and it would be worth it for them to do the same. With this, the other lizards fell into silence, but they knew exactly what to do. And so, the tips of the lizardmen's wooden clubs was now on fire, and in no time, the frogmen village was in flames. Meanwhile, Shunin was visibly pissed at what just happened at the banquet, and so he had gathered the other frogmen who was stationed near the banquet, and had now dipped their arrowheads with poison. Still, he couldn't help himself but wonder what Owen did to change the lizardmen's mind in an instant. But thinking of this now wouldn't get him anywhere. It seems like he just has to ask Owen personally, and so he turned to his warrior and asked if he had conveyed the order, which the warrior confirmed, and that he already summoned all the warriors in the village to attack the black-scaled lizardmen. And the lizardmen in the village was already told to hold the other lizards until the warriors arrived. With this, Shunin felt there was no need for them to idle further, and so he commands everyone to reduce the enemy numbers until reinforcements arrived. And with a whoosh, the arrows flew in union, and Shunin felt this was enough, since their arrows were already dipped in poison. Even if they just brush against it, the enemy will die in pain. But little did he knew, the lizards they thought were foolish was already prepared for such an attack, as they had brought with them the scales of the defeated abomination and used it as a shield. But what's surprising even more was that the shield was so sturdy, and the arrows, which the frogmen had prided themselves on, were just rendered ineffective, bouncing off upon contact with the robust scale shields. This unexpected turn of events left all the frogmen utterly dumbfounded and at a loss for words. And this was all thanks to Ur, who suggested such a protective equipment. Still, the frogmen were prideful. They couldn't just accept the fact that they were just outmaneuvered by what they considered primitive enemies, and so Shunin commands the others to just keep shooting. However, even before they could take out another arrow from their quiver, Shunin noticed smoke filling the air, causing him to look around in alarm, and to his surprise it's already everywhere, and the smoke was so thick that it obscured their view of the lizards, significantly reducing the accuracy of their bow attacks. This led him to wonder where the smoke was coming from, and so he investigated his surroundings, but he was only met by surprise, as he realized that the lizard men in the village had betrayed them, and all of this must be Owen's doing. And Shunin isn't a fool either. He clearly see that they were at a disadvantage, so he decided to back off for now, but the others were hesitant. So Shunin talked some sense into them, but to his surprise, they were more foolish than he initially thought. They don't want to retreat as they just want to avenge their fallen comrades. But they were just met with the glaring eyes of Shunin, and just with this, they realized that if the successor to the tribe leader were to be in danger, everything is over for the tribe. And so they followed Shunin's orders, but as they prepared to leave, one of Aloy's henchmen asked if they are joining the warrior Oboy, but Shunin had no such intention. It is not that he doubts Oboy's abilities, but rather, there is just a more reliable and efficient way to get rid of their enemies, and that revolved around something hidden beneath the middle of the lake. And as this happened, on the other side of the village, the frogman warrior Oboy, who was Aloy's henchman and Shunin's friend, was very confused. The village was on fire, and he heard nothing from the warriors at the banquet. And since he was a great warrior, he analyzed and estimated the numbers of the warriors who are still available. 10 at the banquet, 5 sent to see if there's something going on. But it's probably fair to say they're dead. Shunin has another 15 warriors, and he has 10. With this, Oboy sent an errand boy to go tell the 15 warriors at the high-rank village, and the 4 or 5 warriors guarding the island to hurry and get to the lower-rank village. And Oboy was currently on the outskirts of the village next to the lake. So he instantly deduced what happened. And there's no mistake. They suddenly launched an attack. There are 30 of them altogether. Even if they have more numbers, the fight won't be in their favor unless they attack those lizards all at once. Then they'll be able to defeat the lizards one after another. However, Oboy wasn't convinced that the situation was that bad. He didn't think the 10 warriors at the banquet would easily be defeated, and he had sent the other grayish-brown scaled lizardmen to besiege their enemies. So he assumed that the lizards should now be caught, and the grayish-brown lizardmen just need to buy some time. And if Shunin, him, all the other high-ranked warriors who haven't caught the disease, and the few who are guarding the island come together, there will be at least 45 of them. So, even if it will be difficult to shoot arrows because of the smoke from the burning village, each of them only needs to hit one. With this in mind, instead of getting nervous, Oboy encouraged the warriors, telling them to pack the poisonous frogs and have an arrow prepared, as they will move as soon as Shunin arrive. And as Oboy prepared the 10 warriors he had for battle, His intuition as a warrior seemed to be warning him of a coming danger. His heart was pounding, just like the day they eventually killed the cockatrice. But Oh Boy realized his intuition was no mere feeling. Something is definitely coming from beyond the bushes. And therefore, he immediately raised his bow, aimed at the bushes, and told everyone to get ready to attack. But still Oh Boy was puzzled, as the bushes was at the opposite of where the village was. However, there was a chance the Black Lizardmen had lied about the number of warriors they had. So he didn't let his guard down, and not even a moment passed by. Oh Boy confirmed the bushes were moving, and so he shouted them to shoot as soon as something emerged from it. And the arrows coated with frog poison flew into the bushes at once. But the big thing that appeared from beyond the bushes didn't stop moving. And as it continued to reveal itself, the frogmen got so freaked out they froze in fear. But who could blame them? This thing was long and gigantic, and Manoon was bigger than before, because the land they were in was rich in resources. But the errand girl who was with Joel was a bit concerned, so she pointed out to Joel that Manoon got hit by an arrow, and it seemed like Manoon was also eating an arrow. But Joel remained calm, as she was already used to Manoon eating anything that comes near its mouth, as it was still a young drake after all. And it's reasonable that it had a habit like this because its teeth hadn't finished growing yet. But anyways, Manoon complains a lot these days, so it was easily triggered. And the fact that the arrow doesn't taste good to him made him even more furious. So it lets out a powerful roar, which made the frogmen froze and kneel in submission. But it seemed that they hadn't even noticed the lizardmen riding on its back. And so Joel lightly hit Manoon's back and pointed out to Manoon all the buffet he could eat in front of it, which made Manoon excited. So he immediately jumped at Oh Boy, who was right in front of it. But Oh Boy was an experienced warrior. He rolled backwards and took out an arrow while Manoon stumbled, and the drake snatched the warrior next to Oh Boy instead. The warrior's neck ended up stuck between Manoon's teeth, and Manoon chewed the warrior's head off. And with such display of brutality, Oh Boy realized that the monster they are facing right now wasn't even comparable to a cockatrice. This one is so fast that it will be impossible to get a direct hit on the eye. So if they really want to make sure it gets poisoned, they have to throw the poisonous frog directly to the beast. And just what Oh Boy wanted. The beast immediately ate the frog that he threw. After that, the others followed, throwing all the poisonous frog to beast, which Manoon didn't hesitate to catch it all with its mouth. However, Oh Boy should have realized after the first arrows were shot that the drake didn't get poisoned. Even Joel and the other lizard were surprised of how dumb these frogmen were, and Joel knew well about poisonous frogs. After Rakrak's clan received God's blessing, poisonous frogs had become nothing but a savory meal to them. And when it came to resistance to poison and disease, the drake was much stronger than even the blessed lizardmen. And so after the frogmen was done, Joel provokingly asked the frogmen why they are giving their pet snacks. If they are trying to poison him, then they're out of luck. They should have realized by now that it's useless. And for the first time, Oh Boy's feet turned cold. He felt what true fear was. And without any choice left, Oh Boy charged at the drake. But Manon just easily gobbled his head, killing him on the spot.